Declassified U.S. government documents and witness testimony from former or retired U.S. military personnel confirm beyond any doubt the reality of ongoing UFO incursions at nuclear weapons sites. When I say UFO, the witnesses have described these craft as disc-shaped or cylindrical-shaped or spherical. These objects are capable of both hovering and high-velocity flight, usually completely silently. Over the past 37 years, I have personally located and interviewed more than 120 of these former or retired military personnel, all of whom report UFO incidents at one or more of the following locations: nuclear missile sites, nuclear weapons storage areas, and nuclear weapons test sites in Nevada and the Pacific during the era of atomic atmospheric testing. I believe, these gentlemen believe, that this planet is being visited by beings from another world who, for whatever reason, have taken an interest in the nuclear arms race which began at the end of World War II. Regarding the missile shutdown incidents, my opinion, their opinion, is that whoever are aboard these craft are sending a signal to both Washington and Moscow, among others, that we are playing with fire, that the possession and threatened use of nuclear weapons potentially threatens the human race and the integrity of the planetary environment.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Salas. In 1967, I was a first lieutenant stationed at Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana. I was a missile launch officer, and on March 24th, 1967, I was on duty at what we called Oscar Flight. It is a underground capsule hardened site, about 60 feet underground. We had security guards topside. The main guard is called a flight security controller. My commander at the time was Lieutenant Fred Mywald, now retired Colonel Fred Mywald. Sometime in the evening hours on March 24th, I received a call from one of my topside guards, the flight security controller, stating that they had been observing strange lights in the sky, making odd maneuvers, and wanted to report it. I thought it was kind of a strange report, but I took it seriously. You have to understand we were protecting nuclear weapons, and the reports we generally got were very professional. At any rate, I kind of dismissed the call. He called back about 5 minutes later. This time he was screaming into the phone saying they're looking at an object, a red glowing object hovering just above our front gate. This object was about 30 feet in diameter. He couldn't make out too much of the details of the object, only that it was pulsating, and he had all the guards out there. He was very frightened, wanted me to give him direction. I think I said something like, make sure nothing comes inside the perimeter fence. He immediately hung the phone up. I went to wake my commander, Fred Mywald, who was taking a rest break, started to tell him about the phone call, and just as I told him, our missiles began going into what's called a no-go condition, or unlaunchable. Essentially, they were disabled while this object was still hovering over our site, our launch control facility. At that point, we went through our procedures. He reported back to the command post the incident. We also had some security lights, meaning security incursions at some of the launch facilities. So I called the guard back upstairs and directed that a security team be sent out. At this point, the guard told me the object had left at high speed. Again, silent, no noise. the security guards got out to the launch facility and reported back that they were seeing this object again. They also lost radio contact. This incident terminated at that point. We reset the security alarms, but the missiles themselves were still disabled. We had to call in for maintenance teams to come out and bring them back up on alert. The main indication we got from our equipment was guidance and control system failure. I want to emphasize that the security people upstairs had no control authority over. They had no equipment up there, no ability to affect any kind of system shutdown on our missiles. All the control systems were underground. We were relieved the next morning. I reported back to the command post, the base, Malmstrom, reported to our squadron commander. He was white as a sheet, didn't know how to explain the event. I asked him specifically if it could have been an Air Force exercise, and he assured me that it was not an Air Force exercise. There was also a member of the Air Force Office of Special Investigations in the room. He ordered us to not ever talk about this. I even signed a non-disclosure statement to that effect. This was, and I didn't talk about it, until 1994. I was able to come across a little paragraph in a book called Above Top Secret by Timothy Good. And on page 301 of that book, there's a short paragraph about missiles being shut down while UFOs were overhead. At that point, with the help of Mr. James Klotz, my investigator, we requested the Air Force to send us documents about this shutdown, not mentioning the word UFO. We did get the Air Force to declassify what we'll call the Echo flight incident. Let me back up a little bit. During the report to the command post, my commander, Fred Mywald, turned to me and said the same thing happened at another site. At the time, I thought he meant that evening, but it turns out the same thing had happened a week earlier at another site, and he was probably referring to the Echo flight. At any rate, at that point, when we got the Echo flight incident declassified, I felt I was able to come forward and start talking about it because I thought that's where I was. It wasn't until later I found out it was an Oscar flight, and I realized that not only our flight had gone down, 10 missiles, but the Echo flight also went down about a week earlier on March 16th. We have extensive documentation on the Echo flight incident that we received from the Air Force under Freedom of Information Act. We have the testimony of Walt Fiegel, who was the deputy missile crew commander at Echo flight. I have a couple letters from the commander, Eric Carlson. Colonel Mywald gave me a telephone interview about this in 1996, and I've got that on tape, and he's given me permission to use that. So we've got audio recordings of some of these witnesses. We've got written statements. We've got documentation from the Air Force. All of this supporting what I just told you. I'll have more to say a little bit later about where I think we should go from here, but right now I'll turn it over to the next speaker. What you have heard here today is evidence of a phenomenon. It sounds fantastic, and it is fantastic. We presented this evidence in the public interest of open government. Our signatures on affidavits in the press kit that you have attest to the truth of our statements. Our evidence is now public domain. The real question is, what is the public going to do with it? this testimony. It has been a general practice of the media to scoff at these kinds of stories, make light of such testimony. We can only ask that you take the time to give some serious consideration not only to our statements, but to the statements of other witnesses out there who have similar incidents. There is also documentary evidence that helps support what we have said. We hope you will take the time to at least take a look at those, research this a little bit, and if you do, I think you'll come to the same conclusions that we have. That is that the UFO phenomenon is real, not imaginary. There's current excessive secrecy in our government surrounding this phenomenon. Unknown aerial objects have in fact been observed over many of our nuclear weapons bases and other nuclear facilities, and in some cases the appearance of these objects coincided with compromising the operational readiness of our nuclear weapons. Although each of us might have different opinions about the meaning and intent of these incidents, I think we can all agree that the tampering with nuclear weapons is a national security concern. This is Air Force official policy on UFOs. This is dated 2005, but I believe it is current policy. I'll just read one part of it. It says, no UFO reported, investigated, and evaluated by the Air Force was ever an indication of threat to our national security. That is clearly misleading. It is false based on our testimonies.